Hello friends, so let us continue our discussion on understanding different creep mechanism, particularly how it relates to discerning the overall creep behavior of the material. So in the previous lecture we saw even though there are definite expressions for or equations that relate the creep rate for a given mechanism to that of the varying parameters, based on these different expressions we were able to understand the effect of stress and the effect of temperature. So based on this we will build in today's lecture and see how we can represent the overall creep behavior of a material in a graphical form, so that we are able to understand for a given condition, for a given stress and temperature, which mechanism is operational and how we can discern or predict the creep rate under this particular mechanism. So let us begin by again just seeing the framework of different creep mechanisms. So we saw in the previous lecture that when you have average temperature and average stress, this is a relative value, then the creep mechanism that is operational is referred to as the dislocation creep mechanism. And in this mechanism, the way we would estimate, or the equation that characterizes this particular creep mechanism in a simpler form, can be expressed as this, wherein we are talking about the strain rate in the steady state condition, and this is proportional to the diffusivity of the vacancies, which is dependent on temperature, and the stress that is imposed during this creep testing. And generally the dislocation creep mechanism, or the relation between the creep rate and the stress under the dislocation creep mechanism, is expressed in this manner, wherein there is a power law relation between the creep rate and the stress. Now the other creep mechanism is the diffusion creep mechanism. This is when you have a high temperature and a low stress. Again, this is relative value. When you have high temperature and low stress, you have a diffusion creep mechanism, and in this creep mechanism, similar to that of the dislocation creep, the effect of temperature is through the diffusivity. So even though temperature poses two effects to the creep behavior, one is through the thermal energy, the other is through the vacancies, and even in vacancies you have the influence of temperature on number of vacancies and also on the diffusivity of vacancies. The dominant role of temperature is felt on the creep rate is through that of the diffusivity. So even though temperature plays a role in thermal energy, number of vacancies and diffusivity of the vacancies, the dominant influence on the temperature on the creep rate in both dislocation creep and the diffusion creep is felt through the diffusivity of the vacancies. And then the way stress relates to that of the creep rate under diffusion creep mechanism is through this relation, meaning it is directly proportional and it is not a power law relation. Now we saw when there is a possibility of when you have a relatively low stress. In this condition, when you have a lower range of stress, in the average condition when you have a lower range of stress, then n is equal to 1 for dislocation creep when the stress is in the lower range, and this we refer to as the Harper-Down creep. Now even though when you have n is equal to 1 for Harper-Down creep, and this looks similar to that of diffusion creep, numerically at least it looks similar to that of the diffusion creep, meaning we are relating the creep rate to that of the stress directly. One critical difference is that the diffusion creep comprises of two components. The diffusion creep, it comprises largely of two components, wherein the influence of temperature through the diffusivity is operational either under the bulk diffusion or under the grain boundary diffusion. So these two are or play a major role in the diffusion creep, and these two are referred to as the Nabarro-Herring creep, Navier, and a Kober creep. So in case of diffusion creep, even though we have a direct relation between the strain rate and the stress, the major contributor is the diffusivity of vacancies, and depending on how the vacancy diffuse, the influence between these two, or its influence on the creep rate also varies. Meaning, if the vacancies diffuses through the bulk of the grain or the actual grain, then correspondingly your creep rate would vary. If the diffusion diffuses, or if the vacancies diffuses through the grain boundary, and correspondingly your creep rate varies. So more than that of the stress, the larger influence is played by the diffusion of vacancies in the diffusion creep. So, and this is of course expected because we are talking about a temperature range that is greater than that of the previous operating mechanism, that is the dislocation creep. So what we essentially now have is, even though we can see the relation between the creep rate and the stress is similar for the diffusion creep and the dislocation creep, considering that the role of the diffusivity is the dominant factor, one cannot equate the dislocation creep and the diffusion creep. One cannot equate the Harper-Down creep with the diffusion creep. Okay. So these are the expressions or the characteristic equations that we saw in the previous lecture, and based on them we were able to relate or observe that both stress and temperature, they have a direct or a proportional relation to that of the steady state creep rate, a direct or a proportional relation to that of the steady state creep rate. Meaning, if the stress increases or the temperature increases, the creep rate also correspondingly increases. So based on our understanding of the different creep mechanisms and the relations that it renders, or the different characteristic equations associated with each of these creep mechanisms, we were able to arrive at a general understanding of how, or the factors that influence the creep, or how these factors influence the creep rate. And we saw both temperature and stress, they both, when they increase, they also increase the resulting creep rate of the material. Now let us see, for a given material, how well we can indicate or how well we can illustrate the different creep mechanism that is operational for different combinations of stress and temperature. So we saw, for a given combination of stress and temperature, we have a different creep mechanism that is operational, and for a given creep mechanism you have a characteristic way how the creep rate would vary. So we want to see how well we can present this data, that is the influence of stress and temperature on deciding which creep mechanism is operational and how it varies with the, or how it changes the creep rate. Let us see how well we can present this particular information. So this has been done by a person named Ashby, and therefore it is referred to as the Ashby's map or Ashby's deformation map. So what essentially Ashby's deformation map does is, it represents which creep mechanism is active during a particular combination of stress and temperature. So our understanding is, for a given combination of stress and temperature, there should be one creep mechanism that is active, and based on that the creep rate should vary. So when you have someone who wants to use who wants to see at what rate his material would deform for a given combination of stress and temperature, instead of calculating the creep rate, one can decide which mechanism is operational, and based on that mechanism he can then relate that mechanism, or he can use the characteristic relation for that mechanism and calculate the creep rate, that is, that he can expect when he has a particular combination of stress and temperature. So this information is presented in this manner, similar to any given map, you have two coordinates. The one is along the x-axis, you have the influence of the stress, which is normalized by the shear modulus, and in the this is the y-axis. In the x-axis, you have the temperature, which is normalized by the melting point. So this here is referred to as the homologous temperature. Homologous temperature, which is nothing but the ratio of the temperature at which the material is operating to that of its melting point. So what essentially Ashby did is, he combined for different combination of stress and temperature, he found which mechanism is operational, and this he found using or by calculating the steady state creep rate, and he plotted a map which enables us to understand which creep mechanism is operational for a given stress and temperature. A rather schematic way of representing, or a schematic look of this deformation map, is something like this. So here, this is the range wherein you have the higher stress influence. So you have your dislocation glide that is operational here, and here you would have your Coble creep mechanism, and here you have your temperature, and you have your high temperature region, and here you have the combination of stress and the high temperature. So when you have a combination of stress and the high temperature, so you would have your dislocation creep mechanism that is operational, and when the role of the high temperature is dominant, then you have your Nabarro-Herring creep that is operational. So this is just a schematic representation of how a deformation map would look like, or Ashby's deformation map would look like. So what Ashby's deformation map does is, it categorizes or it sections a space that is created by the combination of stress and temperature. So you have created a space using the variable stress and temperature. This Ashby's map sections the space into different creep mechanism that is operational for a given combination of stress and temperature. So the stress we are using is normalized by the shear modulus, and the temperature we are using is normalized by the melting temperature of the material. Now here in this range, when you are considering a huge amount of stress or higher stress region like this, the only mechanism that is operating is the dislocation glide, and this dislocation glide, irrespective of the temperature, given that the stress is higher or it is relatively higher when compared to the other regions, the only mechanism that is operational is the dislocation glide. And here, as we could recollect, there will be an increase in the dislocation density, and the compensation that should come from the high temperature or through that of the recovery is rather restricted, and only annihilation plays a role. Now when you have a low stress and a combination of and a rather a high temperature, because we are talking about when compared to the ambient temperature, all these temperatures are high. So we don't start here with 0, we start here with the high temperature, or at least 0.5% of the melting point for the x-axis. So that means we are already operating on a high temperature. So in this region, the Coble creep mechanism is active. The Coble creep mechanism, this mechanism, it is characterized by the diffusivity of vacancies along the grain boundaries. So what essentially is happening is, so in this region, in the Coble stress, or in this region, the rate of creep is proportional to that of the applied stress, and the major component that plays a role in deciding this creep rate is the diffusivity of vacancies along the grain boundaries. So for this combination of temperature and this stress, if you could recollect, we expressed the diffusivity along the grain boundary as a constant exponential term, and activation energy along the grain boundary kappa T. And similar expression can be arrived at for the bulk diffusivity or the diffusion through the bulk of the phase, and we saw that the activation energy that needs to be overcome is less for the grain boundary than that of the bulk of the phases. So that means when there is not much temperature or thermal energy in order to overcome this particular activation energy, which is higher for the bulk of the grain, the easier the vacancies chooses the easier path, that is along the grain boundary, and thereby yielding a Coble creep mechanism. And that is the reason why you see for relatively lower range of the temperature, we see the Coble creep mechanism is active. So put it simply, under the Coble creep mechanism, which is characterized by or which operates under the relatively low temperature range in this map, there is not much energy or sufficient thermal energy to overcome the barrier in the bulk of the material. So it is possible for the material or for the vacancies to overcome the barrier only along the grain boundaries, and that is the reason why the Coble creep mechanism is active in this particular temperature range and in this particular stress range. Now, as the temperature increases, now the vacancies have sufficient energy to overcome the activation energy posed by the bulk of the grains. So if you consider a grain, something like this. So there are two ways the vacancy can propagate. So the vacancies can move in this way, or it can also move along the grain boundaries. Now, the mobility of these vacancies are governed by the activation energy. The activation energy along the grain boundaries is it is comparatively or relatively low, and that is the reason why even when the temperature is low, there is a significant amount of vacancy diffusion along the grain boundaries, and that is the reason why you have Coble diffusion mechanism or Coble creep mechanism at the low temperature. However, when you increase the temperature, when you raise the temperature, then you would observe that we have introduced, or by increasing the temperature, the thermal energy has increased to overcome the activation energy that is provided by that of the creep. So the creep or that is provided by that of the bulk. So we have, by increasing the temperature, allowed the vacancies to overcome the activation energy rendered by the bulk. So that means this diffusion within the grains is also possible, and once you have the diffusion within the grain is possible, and once you have the diffusion within the volume of the grain or the bulk of the grain that is possible, then you have a shift from the Coble creep mechanism to that of the Nabarro-Herring creep mechanism. Now ultimately, when you have the combination of average stress and average temperature, you have the dislocation creep mechanism, and this dislocation creep mechanism is characterized by the combination of diffusivity and also the power law between the creep rate and the stress. So this is what characterizes the dislocation creep mechanism. So at relatively high stress, you have dislocation glide. At relatively low temperature, you have the Coble creep, because the only way the diffusion of vacancy is possible is through the grain boundary, because that is what offers the least resistance. And when you increase the temperature, you move into the Nabarro-Herring, because you now have sufficient thermal energy to overcome the activation energy rendered by the bulk of the phases, and the combination of average stress and average temperature results in the dislocation creep mechanism, and this is characterized by the diffusivity, combination of diffusivity of vacancies and the power law relation between the creep rate and stress. Now, supposing you have a combination of the stress and temperature that lies in the line here. Supposing the combination of the stress and temperature lies in the lines that separate the different creep mechanism, then how would one calculate what is the rate of creep, given that the combination of stress and temperature lies in the line that separates the two creep mechanism. If the points are within a particular region, then it is easy for us because we have a characteristic equation for each of these creep mechanisms. Supposing you have a point which lies on the line, then how would one calculate the resulting creep rate of the material? So the way to do that is something that we have already seen, because when you have a point that is along this line, say for instance, if you have a point say along this line here, you want to calculate the creep mechanism along this point here. So this point, say A, we want to calculate the creep mechanism at this point A, which lies in this line here, and this line it separates Coble creep from that of the dislocation creep. So A lies in the line, so A lies in the line that separate dislocation creep and Coble creep. So what it means that when you have a point that lies in the line that separates two creep mechanisms, it means that these two creep mechanisms are operating parallelly or simultaneously. So when you talk about the line that separates two different mechanisms, what this line indicates is that in this line, the two mechanisms that are being separated are operating together. They are operating simultaneously. Now, if you could recollect, under this condition, the overall creep rate is expressed as the summation of the creep rate rendered by the individual mechanisms. So this would be the creep rate according to the dislocation creep mechanism and the creep rate according to that of the Coble creep mechanism. So under the when your point lies on the line, then you have to take the summation of these two creep mechanisms that it separates. So you have a definite expression for two creep mechanisms, and when your point lies on the line that separates these two creep mechanisms, then you have to just sum it up. The same goes for the points here. So let us mark it using blue. So if you have a point here, say the points here, then instead of having two different creeps that are mechanisms that are operational, we have three different creep mechanisms that are operational. Say for instance, if you talk about this point B here, you have Coble creep, dislocation creep, and dislocation glide mechanism that is operational. If you want to talk about this point here, you have dislocation creep, Nabarro-Herring creep, and Coble creep that are operational. And in these points, they are operating simultaneously. So if you want to calculate the overall creep rate at this point, then it would be the summation of all the creep mechanisms, or the rates rendered by all the creep mechanisms. So it is important to note that this Ashby's deformation map, it shows that at one point, so this is from the deformation map. This deformation map indicates that at one point, the maximum number of creep mechanisms that is operational is equal to 3. So we just have a triple points here. So that means for a given combination of stress and temperature, the maximum number of creep mechanisms that can operate at that point would be 3. So these are represented by the triple points. Now supposing you want to ensure, or you instead of holding the temperature or the stress to be constant, you may ensure that the strain rate at which the material is deforming is constant, and correspondingly you vary either the stress or the temperature. So let us assume that you are varying your stress in order to ensure, for a given temperature, in order to ensure the deformation rate or the creep rate is constant. So that means you would have to change the stress in order to ensure that the strain rate is constant for a given temperature. So in that case, let me use a different color. So in that case, your stress is not constant and it will be varying in this manner. So it will be, let me try to draw it, redraw it. So you have your deformation map. You have your Coble creep. So you have your stress here, you have your homologous temperature here, You have your Kerbal creep, you have your Nabarro-Herring creep, and you have your dislocation creep and your dislocation glide. Now supposing instead of holding the stress or the temperature constant, stress and the temperature constant, you are holding just the temperature as constant and you are allowing the stress to vary in order to ensure that the strain rate is constant. So now what the strain rate and the temperature are constant. So in this case, the stress would vary in order to ensure that the strain rate is maintained constant. So it would go something like this. So it would vary something like this. So under a condition, let us assume a theoretical condition wherein there is a change in the stress like this. So what happens is that as your stress increases, the mechanism changes from one to another. It begins with Nabarro-Herring creep and moves to the dislocation creep and then moves to the dislocation glide. So now when you want to calculate, so each of these mechanisms, they have their own characteristic relation between the creep rate and the stress and the temperature, and now the stress is varying. Now if you want to calculate the overall rate of such a test wherein these two are maintained constant and the stress is varying, so for such a test, when you want to calculate which or the average of the creep or which mechanism is operational, we would know that initially it is the Nabarro-Herring creep mechanism that is operational and the dislocation creep that is operational after once you have the higher stress that is operating, and at the even higher stress you have your dislocation glide that is operational. So this particular deformation map can also be used in order to trace for a given constant creep rate what are the different mechanisms that occur one after the other in a series, how the creep mechanism shift from one to another can be viewed from this Ashby's deformation map. So essentially what Ashby's deformation map tells us is which mechanism is operational at a given point. So for a combination of a given a stress and the temperature, which creep mechanism is operational can be gained from that of the this deformation map. And since each of these mechanism, they have their characteristic relation between the creep rate and the temperature and stress, we can calculate what creep rate the material is experiencing based for the given combination of stress and temperature. So in addition to knowing which mechanism is operational, since we have a dedicated expression for each of these mechanisms, we can calculate under which strain rate will the material deform. So this is one of the tools that we can use to present the creep behavior of the material. So the creep behavior of the material, it varies with the stress and the temperature we choose, and depending on the stress and temperature, the material adopts one specific mechanism to deform, and this we can present it in the form of this map, and thereby when we have a dedicated map for each material, then for a given stress and temperature one can understand which creep mechanism is operational, and since for each creep mechanism we have a dedicated equation that relates the stress to the temperature, we can thereby calculate the corresponding rate at which the material would deform under this combination of stress and temperature. So this is one of the useful way of representing the creep behavior of a material under different stress and temperature conditions. So with this, I would like to wind up the part 1 of this lecture, and we will continue with understanding the other aspect of the creep in the subsequent part. So let's see ourselves in the next part.